I'm Dr. Jason J. Campbell, and I want to thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. This video is a continuation of my ongoing analysis into Nietzsche's Will to Power. The book is Friedrich Nietzsche, The Will to Power, edited by Walter Kaufmann. And as you guys know, this is a continual attempt to make sense of the text. That's basically the extent of what it is that I'm trying to accomplish here. What I'm going to do in this section, which is going to be section 10.3 of my notes, is I'm going to look into further this dichotomy and the dichotomous relationship between good and evil, as I've been doing up until this point. Up until this point, a lot of my effort, a lot of Nietzsche's effort, more importantly, was the attempt to make sense of sort of the invalidity, right? The fact that it's an invalid claim on many conceptual levels to say that there is this sort of fabricated distinction between good and evil. Good has these characteristics, evil has these characteristics, an individual moral agent has the moral choice to choose between good or evil. Insofar as the moral agent chooses good, his actions are moral, her actions are moral. Insofar as the moral agent chooses evil, his actions are immoral, her actions are immoral. And Nietzsche wants to say that this is false, right? He's trying to conflate the concept and this sort of arbitrary binary opposition between good and evil to show us that we can have a more robust understanding of what exactly good and evil is. So in this section, I'm going to walk through conceptually how Nietzsche brings us to that point, the obliteration, the destruction of this binary. We'll complicate it quite a bit more later in the analysis, much later in the analysis. But as of now, I just want to introduce this process. Okay, so let's begin. This is 10.3 in the notes, as you guys know. You can access the notes by clicking the link in the description. I've updated the notes, so just make sure that you have the most up-to-date version of the notes. And let's begin. So this is Nietzsche's Will to Power. And this is section 10.3. And we're doing notes 351 to 361. 351 through 361. Okay. So we're going to be thinking about the following, right? The obliterating evil and the good man. Right? The idea of the good man. And I just described what that is, right? We have the concept of the good in almost a Platonic sense, versus in opposition to the concept of evil, and the individual moral agent has an opportunity to be guided by either good or evil. Right? Either good or evil. Those actions that are performed in accordance with what we conceptualize as evil are immoral. Those actions that conform to the conceptions of what we consider good are moral, and so on. Right? So this is sort of generally the idea. Nothing complicated here. So let's look at what Nietzsche says. Here's a quote from note 351 in the text. Quote: "The demand." Right? We begin immediately with the demand. The demand of the ideal state is that man should castrate himself, right, of those instincts with which he can be an enemy, can cause harm, can be angry, can demand revenge. The demand, right? There's multiple things that need to be addressed in this point, right? And the thing with Nietzsche is his writing style is, I mean, obviously this wasn't intended for publication. His writing style is a bit disjointed. He speaks rather poetically. It's not necessarily prose. His idea, then, is that there is a demand that is being placed on the moral agent, right? So that we can locate here this at both points as the demand. Right? This is the demand. The demand of the ideal state is that man should castrate himself of those instincts with which he can be an enemy. Right? In the last section, we said that we are, conceptually speaking, progressing towards the notion of perfection. Right? So in section 10.2, the idea was Nietzsche is warning us about the dilemma that is this pending dilemma. And the pending dilemma is this idea of perfection. We are individuals that are, in some sense, directed towards perfection. We are attempting to, we have this desire, as we saw in note 172, I think it was 170.2, if I'm not mistaken, for personal immortality, right, in a religious sense. This desire allows us, there's a direct correlation between, as I said, desire and, so just D for desire and V for value. So there is a direct correlation with the increase of desire, our values increase. The value we attribute to that thing. As our desire increases, our value increases, right? So Nietzsche says that because we have this desire, and our desire is directed towards this notion of perfection, personal perfection, we're going to attribute quite a bit of value to the concept, right? We're going to have an overvaluation, right, with respect to the notion of perfection. The demand, right, the demand is, if it is the case that moral agents are aspiring for personal immortality, and they attribute as much possible value because of desire to that end state, to that telos, to that goal, then it has to be the case that once we arrive at the state of perfection, that perfection cannot be a state, that state of perfection cannot be a state where there is interpersonal antagonism, right? There can't be any combat. Right? In this state of perfection, right, there can't be any combat, there can't be any tension, there can't be any conflict. It can't have that state. The state of perfection, if you follow it through, can't be a state where there is inherent combat. There can't be any conflict. There can't be any disassociation with respect to beliefs. Why? Because only, and this is important, right? Why? Because only those who maintained the belief that my goal, my telos, my culmination of this human existence is that which ends in personal immortality, that every person who has made it to that level, everyone who has achieved, if you think of it in a ranking sense, right? Everyone who has achieved that rank of personal immortality, in a sense, has to ascribe to the same system of beliefs, right? It was our system of belief that got us to this point. Thus, the fact that you're at this point means that we share the same system of beliefs. Since we share the same, and I know I'm going a little bit faster, it's getting a little bit more complicated, so I can't spend as much time trying to make it, I can't do too much ghetto philosophy at this point, so just follow along with me. Since it's the case that we, conceptually, have arrived individually at this state of personal immortality, and we recognize that the state of personal immortality, perfection, the ideal state, is a consequence of the relationship between, the direct correlation relationship between value and desire, then you have to have the same values that I have. You have the same desires that I have, which means the system of beliefs, right? The system of beliefs that informed those values and desires has to be shared. So there wouldn't be any possibility for us to have any opposition in this ideal state. Right? The idea is that as we progress literally through this world, right? Because you can think of it in two senses. This world and the world of transcendence. Right? The world of transcendence is otherworldly, obviously. And this world is a biological world. This world is going to be motivated, my progress is going to be motivated by what? My values. It's a system of, it's a moral system. It has to be a system of values. Right? It's going to be motivated by a system of values. That system of values is going to, as we've seen, be contingent itself on the desires that I have. Right? It's going to be fueled by desire. The desire is going to fuel my values, right? And I talk more about this in different in a different lecture series on the concepts